Core Technical Committee meeting for the 6th of July, 2016. Let us go immediately to stand up. And I don't think Ben is here, but Nikita is, so he gets to start.
I don't have anything significant to say on the stand-up. So next one is Chris.
Chris is also not here, so I think it's next would be Colin.
Just the usual issues, pull requests, opened a couple PRs. Next is Evan.
Yeah, I commented on a few issues, not much else though. Next is Jeremiah.
I got the v6.3.0 release out today. I think that's the most difficult release I've done to date. There was a lot of commits in it, and there was probably like, I think 8 or 9 conflicts, some of them which were not the easiest to resolve. So there was that took a bunch of time, and then I did various PR and issue review, as usual. And next would be John David Dalton if he has anything, or Josh Cavan.
Hey, so I don't have much. I did do another round of questions with Chakra Dev Contact just to ensure that if the change to the grammar was accepted as a spec change, would that be any different or more complicated than just offering a node specific API? And the results were no, it shouldn't be any more difficult, at least on the gut check level. So that's good news. That's it. Oh, I also made updates to the proposal based on feedback.
So that comes to me. Nothing for me this week. I was out on vacation. So Michael's next.
Okay, I added Linux 1 to the regression jobs and watched for issues, but it seems to be all good in master. Next step is to add Linux 1 to the nightly releases, so I'll look at that next week. Chasing down a few AIX build breaks and test failures. We had, I think, 2 things that caused it to stop building, and then once got those fixed, it seems there's some things causing actual test failures now that it builds again, so chasing those down. Continued work on the ABI stable module API and scheduling of the next API working group meeting. Miscellaneous PR issue reviews and pull requests. Working on the postmortem work with Richard and trying to schedule the next meeting to get the group together. A small update to the benchmark graphs just to indicate whether high or low is better, and just generally, reading through the issues and keeping up to date with them. Next is Brian White.
Okay. Only thing I've really been working on mostly is rebasing the JavaScript HTTP parser PR that I had done a long time ago, just to see if I could to see how it compares performance-wise with current HTTP implementation. That's going to take probably quite a while just because there's so many commits. But anyway, other than that, it was just mostly been reviewing PRs, commenting on issues, that sort of thing. Next is Alexis.
Yes, I was out on vacation the last 2 weeks, so I just spent the last couple of days catching up with everything. Nothing else to report. Next is Shigeki.
I worked for the one review for the PR for doc change. And the next is Trevor.
Hey, worked on the Async wrap EP and threw up the FS real path PR for the symlink fix. Next is Trot.
So this morning I onboarded Bart. I believe his last name is Sosnovsky. Works with Alexis, and wow, stuff's happening here. And right, and the other thing I've been working on is trying to chase down the testnet write slow thing that's failing on FreeBSD a ton and on CI, and I have a PR in for a fix. It's PR number 7555. I would love to get that landed sooner rather than later. So if you have a second to review it, please do. Although the PR itself is short, it links to the issue it fixes, which has all the gory details. So that's fun and exciting. And it looks like James may have just joined us. So
Yes,
James, you're on. Okay, we're on stand up. You're on.
Okay. Working on some PRs. I've worked on the URL, the WebWP URL implementation. Got that up and running. We're passing all of the standard parsing tests and all but 2 of the setter tests, and those 2 that were not are very, very minor. I think that's ready for broader review. Would love to have folks take a good look at that. Other than that, just kind of closing up some other to-dos before going on vacation on Friday. I'm going to be completely unavailable for at least a week. So that's me.
Okay, yes, I'm unmuted. Fabulous. Yeah, so no Rod here. So James, I don't know if you want to try to run it, or actually you sound like you're still getting oriented. So maybe I'll just keep plowing ahead here. Let's see here. I guess we usually go over last week's minutes or something at this point. I'm kind of in over my head.
Yeah. So what did we discuss last meeting anyways? Oh, no, that's the agenda. Okay.
It's in the notes there after the agenda.
Yeah.
That's sorry.
So the new buffer API backport to v4.x. I think we agreed to do that. Is that merged now? I think it might be.
The zero fill buffers command line flag is merged. I don't know if the actual backport of the APIs. Nikita, are you on?
Yes, it's not merged yet. I filed a pull request initially against version 4.x branch instead of version 4.x staged, and I fixed that just today. So I can post the new pull request number here. Give me a moment. Synced from that pull request. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, we definitely discussed that. What else on the rest of the agenda?
I'm sorry, are we still working through the last week's? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Yeah. So child process, or are we still on the buffer stuff?
Child process validate fork / exec arguments.
Yeah, that was rubber stamped and merged. That's all good.
Node 6 fs.real path behavior changes. I believe Trevor is working on part of this, and there might be an issue open for the other part of it or something.
Is there another part?
I think it's in today's thing too.
Yeah,
I think it was
I think Bart opened like this morning.
Yeah, I think that was to cover like platform differences or something.
Yeah, it was a Windows specific use case.
So okay. Yeah, I think that was Windows when you're trying to real pass something on another drive, something like that.
It sounds about right.
It's in today's agenda too. So
we have that in the agenda. Yeah. REPL default use global to false in the CLI REPL. I believe we decided to go ahead with that. Legal advice, I don't think that came up last week. Mentioned odd number releases, has 8 months support as current. I believe we finalized the decision on that, or officiated it, whichever.
I think we kicked it back to GitHub. We said it was probably a good idea, and the web group should wordsmith it or something like that. That's my recollection anyway.
Yeah. Async wrap public API proposal. I believe that's also in today's agenda. Rich, do you want to take the actual agenda from the minutes?
Sure, if it makes your life easier, I'm happy to help. So we want to, I guess the first thing on the agenda is the proposal to drop support for Visual Studio 2013 in V7. And James, I believe you tagged this.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Kind of cut out.
Okay, the issue for dropping support for Visual Studio 2013 in version 7 of
right.
Node. I believe you tagged that, so can you frame it for us?
Yeah, I tagged it. So we have a number of issues that have come up with 2013 support. I know Ben's run into some things. I've run into some things. We've just compile errors. And there have been a number of issues just kind of ongoing with native add-ons, where the current recommendation is to try to build against 2015 if possible. I know that there are some out there that do require 2013, but we really want to try to encourage people to upgrade. So the idea is just in V7 or even in V6 before it goes LTS, if we can get away with it. Just to drop support for VS 2013. But still make it possible to build native add-ons in 2013.
So I spent some time reviewing this issue. I don't have a problem with dropping VS 2013 for Node build. Definitely we need to support add-on. Dropping support in V6, it's a bit risky in that it would be a breaking change for some modules out there, and we would need more time to assess the potential impact. There is the API incompatibility with the thread local storage that has impacted Node SAS. So they're working around it by compiling only with VS 2013. So once we start building Node with VS 2015, we would just flip the situation. So they would have to use 2015 instead of 2015. And there might be other modules affected.
I think at this point, I mean, there are a significant number of unknowns. I think we should probably split the conversation. One, would we want to drop to the VS 2013 is a December major change in V7, all right? That's the first conversation. The second conversation is, would we want to do it to drop VS 2013 in V6 before it goes LTS?
I'm kind of curious if
the only argument there, I'm going to say the only argument there really is that the 2013 compiler is already really old, and if we do ship V6 with that support, that puts us continuing to maintain it for the next 30 months after it goes LTS, which is a pretty long time.
So I think the first conversation is pretty uncontroversial. I don't think, am I mistaken? I don't think anybody's in the GitHub issue has said we shouldn't drop it for V7. Is that right?
I think you're correct.
Right.
And then the second conversation is really, we need to gather information, because if we can find a way to use, NaN or whatever to not break it, whatever native add-ons will break, and we'll never have a comprehensive list. But if we can find a way to do it without breaking the add-ons that we know about that will break, then great. And if we can't, we're kind of stuck, right? Our hands are more or less tied.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's correct. Yes.
So it sounds like, I don't mean to be the bull in the china shop, but I want to get through as many of these issues as possible. And it seems to me like the first conversation, we know what we're going to do. And the second conversation, we can't really decide without gathering more information. So maybe we should talk about have the second conversation next week after, Joao or whoever is looking at the issue, Alexis or whatever, has gathered the information required to make a sound decision.
Yep, sounds about right.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, cool. Thank you for letting me plow through that. Is the next one? I guess the next one is Node 6 FS real path behavior changes. Do we know who tagged this one?
I think it might have still been tagged from last week.
Oh yeah, James tagged it, and Rod left a note that said last week that said we discussed at the CTC meeting. Trevor Norris is working on the option chosen, which is keep the new behavior and add logic to handle new and unexpected errors, ignoring the fact that other methods in FS can cause an eloop error. And yeah, so I guess, and it says leaving it on the CTC agenda, so we have some pressure to resolve it. So I guess we should just get a status report maybe from Trevor. Does that work?
Sure, it's working. I'm just adding a test right now. There's one thing where it will fail after it recurses, which is that it did before. Though I feel like the number of times it fails, or the number of times it will recurse in before failing, feels kind of arbitrary. So would like comment on that. And also, I don't know right now the number of symlinks in a single resolve of the path is 32 because of an OSX header. I don't know if we want to make it platform dependent and pull in the maximum number of symlinks it can resolve at a given time based on what platform it's running on, or whether we just want to cut it at 32. But comments on the PR welcome. It's working as is right now.
Cool. So it sounds like those issues you raised are things that probably can and should be discussed in the PR. If anybody feels differently, tell me to shut up right now. Okay, great. Next up is replacing section 5.1 with the unambiguous JavaScript grammar with that. Yes, John, please just take it away because I'm not going to finish that sentence without.
Sweet. Okay, so this is this was brought up the previous meeting and given time to simmer. The gist here is to replace the section 5.1 of the ES module proposal for Node, which was the file extension .mjs, with unambiguous JavaScript grammar. The pull request is open on Node EPS. It's number 33, and Rod expressed wanting to have a vote this week if possible on merging that pull request. So y'all should have reviewed it by now, and that's what that's about.
Yeah, and I seem to recall there was some concern about, well, I mean, Rod I think left a comment this morning about how there's basically what he called a get out of jail free card in there.
Correct. Yeah. So last week I took the feedback from the CTC, which was to add a clause that said, hey, if things don't work out with TC39, then it would fall back to the MJS proposal. And so I just linked to the current commit or the current revision of that to make it clear that that's y'all's intent.
So I guess the question is, does anybody want to discuss any aspects of this or ask any questions, or are we all prepared to vote either, aye, nay, or abstain? I'm going to take that silence as that no one feels the need to ask any questions, and we should vote. So I'll do the Rod method. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, I counted 8 ayes, and I'm 9. All opposed? Okay. Anybody want to abstain? Great.
Yeah, I need to abstain.
Okay, so we have an abstention. So we can't say it's unanimous, but we can say it's pretty overwhelming that we want that merged. So,
All right,
awesome.
rock on.
Thank you for all the
Nice.
work.
No problem. Glad to help.
All right. Cool. So, unless there's anything further to talk about there, next up is the async wrap public API proposal, which I believe Trevor put on the agenda. And it's kind of too bad Ben's not here for this, but there is the GitHub issue. Go ahead, Trevor.
Okay, well, let's see. I think this is a carryover from last week. And yeah, you're right. I do wish Ben was here today because he brought up an issue in the Node.js issue tracker, in the Node issue tracker, about whether async wrap should even exist anymore. It's kind of the opposite way I was going with this, but that's cool. The EP itself is almost complete. There continues to be feedback on clarifications that need to be made, additional examples they'd like to see, just to make sure this gets hammered out. And yeah, has everybody had a chance to read over it, at least within the last week?
Yeah, I took another look at it the other day. Everything's looking good. Probably the one aspect I would like to see, just like Rod pointed out in his comments, is just a little clarification on that one error handling question.
Yeah.
But other than that, looking pretty solid.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then there's a couple comments of I'm just going to remove the comment of the additional and/or different functionality, and just make an API addition later down the road, just to simplify this.
Just for clarification, if we vote to endorse the EPS, it's a statement of, if we're going to implement this, this is how the API will look, or it's a statement of, we are going to implement this?
It is. As far as I'm concerned, it is an agreement that if it gets implemented, this is what it will look like, and so I can begin finishing the implementation.
Got it.
Because there are some questions of like, well, how do we handle promises? Well, we are waiting, for additional API so we can do so, but that works more in parallel. We shouldn't have to wait for that to be implemented before the rest of the async wrap API can be put in.
So theoretically, someone could find, in the one issue, say, endorse this EPS and say, yes, if we're going to implement it, this is the way we should implement it, but also be sympathetic to the points Ben raises that maybe this shouldn't be implemented at all. Those are not actually contradictory views. They're kind of related but orthogonal.
Yeah. Yeah, if this gets voted in, I'll begin on the implementation. But then if it's decided ultimately that this shouldn't be in at all, then I will step back and let somebody else take it from here, because I can't handle it anymore.
Got it.
No, it's, as far as voting on it, the biggest missing chunk, almost everything else is just fix up or clarifications. The missing chunk is the public API, which I almost have hammered out. The issue is that async wrap relies on internals, and on the C++ side, it's difficult to simultaneously expose a C++ class that can hook into async wrap and not expose things it shouldn't expose. So I'm working on that. I'm just about there, and then once I have a proof of concept, I'll write it up. But whether we want to wait for that or whether I put that in a different EP, I'll leave up to everybody else. Again, this is a large amount of work, so I feel like it's not an issue if those two parts were broken up for discussion, because I feel like public API in and of itself will be a lengthy discussion.
Just to be clear, we're talking about the public C++ API?
C++ is the major part. There are some minor parts of a couple of things in the JavaScript API. For example, there's the issue of batched calls, which people have pointed out, and I have a fairly simple solution for that on the C++ or on the JavaScript side. So it'd be a very, very minimal JavaScript API. The key part is the C++ API.
So as far as I understand, we're discussing, okay, so if we wanted like this thing, this is an API surface on, well, the EP only covers the JavaScript end, so on the JavaScript end it would be comfortable enough with to have serious work dedicated to like an implementation of it. I think it should be kept in mind that like stuff still could come up during implementation, and like this API could potentially like minorly change from here, so it's not like a frozen thing or anything, and like stuff will, if it were to be shipped, stuff would probably be added to it in the future. So
I've done everything in my power to make any future changes purely additive. Don't see from this point, from the point of the EP, I don't see any breaking changes going forward. But stuff happens.
Right. I mean, this is a statement of what we think things will look like based on what we know today. But during the course of implementation, new things might be learned, et cetera, and might necessitate changes. But we don't anticipate that. But stuff like that happens.
Yep. That's about it. Any questions from anyone about it, or the path going forward and whatnot?
What's your goal as far as when do you want this to become like a public documented API? I mean, I'm assuming as soon as possible, but like realistically, what are you thinking on
that? When does 6 go LTS?
In October.
6 goes in LTS in October.
Okay, October. It's going to go in initially as experimental. Excuse me. So I believe we can land it in 6 before 6 goes LTS. And if this gets voted in, I'll be able to begin the implementation of what it has for so it can land in 6 before 6 goes LTS. And that also how this handles promises does depend on what V8 does in terms of promise support, opening up the black box of promises to the API. And unfortunately, that will probably come in a future version of V8 that we cannot land in V6. So is Chris here? I'm sure I'll have something to say about this. But the only thing I can say is that it will have to stick under the experimental flag, with the caveat that we cannot propagate state through promises because we have not been provided the API to do so.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd kind of like to go ahead with this. I think async wrap is probably our best bet at sort of the entire CLS across async activities, potential future domain replacement, etc. that we're going to get, considering Trevor has experimented with this stuff for a very long time. Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything they want to say or anything they want to ask before we have a vote, including suggesting that we don't vote this week, although I think we should? All right, let's do it then if there's no objections. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so I counted.
Aye.
Whoops. Great. So I counted 7 or 8 ayes there.
I think 2 of those ayes were like said at the same time 2 times in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, the 7 or 8. You know, it's in that range. All opposed, say no, please. I heard somebody gasp, but I don't think that was a no. And if anyone wants to officially abstain, please do so. All right, I think it's a resounding endorsement to give the EPS a stamp of approval. Congratulations, Trevor, and thanks for the long, hard slog so far, and the no doubt long, hard slog going forward.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone.
Did we do it? Did we get through everything?
I think we got through everything.
Man,
Okay.
high fives all the way around. It's Q&A time. Woo! All right.
I put at the end of the doc next meeting. I put in there the things that we said we need to talk about next time, and I also put the upcoming meetings. So people that are leading the other ones. Oh, I just was saying that if people want to, before we switch this off, if people want to add in meetings that are coming up in the next week or two in the next meeting section in the doc, like Michael, I know you're setting up a postmortem and a build for a postmortem. Just FYI.
Cool.
Put that in the doc.
Thanks for that, Josh. All right, so how do we usually solicit questions? Is it IRC and Twitter, basically?
Usually using the YouTube chat is the most reliable. Someone should check IRC though, since I currently do not have access to it.
Okay, but you do have access to the YouTube chat?
Yes. So if anyone has any questions, we'll keep this open for a couple of minutes still. Please put them into the YouTube chat. Apparently there's only 2 people watching anyway, so I think we're good. I don't know why there's only 2 today. Usually it's more, but hey.
More people follow you than follow me, I guess.
I don't know. I tweeted it too. I couldn't find your tweet to retweet it. Anyways,
All right, cool.
I think we're done here. We'll move into the private section.
All right then. Thanks everybody. I think.
Can everyone say bye to the recording?
Bye.
Bye.